Hello, welcome to Box on the Box Rock and Celluloid, Botbrack for short. I'm Edward Box. Please share and subscribe to these videos if you enjoy them. So, another top 10 films by one of my favourite directors today. It's David Lynch. He's been nicknamed Jimmy Stewart from Mars. I think that's a really good description of him. He has this kind of aw shucks 1950s sensibility about him, but it's like he's been, taking loads of drugs and there's something not quite right. It's weird when you look into his background, pretty regular. And then he kind of gets to college and starts experimenting in art. I think he studies art, and then he starts experimenting with filmmaking, and he makes short films. The Grandmother, and there's another one I think. The Grandmother's amazing. And then he makes his debut film, Eraserhead, over quite a long period of time. In a kind of makeshift studio in the university, I think. Don't quote me on this. And it goes on from there. So his top 10 films, well, it's easy to do them in the sense he's only got 10 films. But I need to get my confession out of the way. My number 10 choice, I've seen it, but I just couldn't totally concentrate. I couldn't get away with it. It's Inland Empire. So I need to watch this again, but I'm going to put it 10th. But it's just there because that's the kind of 10th film. So I'm getting my confession out of the way there. So this was like shot on digital video, I think 2006, about 3 hours long. By this point, Lynch is getting very experimental. The next thing he'd do is the reboot of Twin Peaks for Showtime, Sky Atlantic, which is some of the craziest TV you'll ever see. And there's one episode of that which is quite extraordinary, where it's basically a whole kind of nuclear blast sequence and a kind of work of art, really. But you're kind of abandoning, you start to abandon a lot of narrative conceits as far back as Twin Peaks, Far Walk With Me, certainly Lost Highway. So his films have got kind of more impenetrable in some respects. So yeah, that's my number 10 choice. My number 9 choice is the aforementioned Lost Highway. This came out in 1997. It was a 5-year gap between this and Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. So it takes a long time between his projects. Even at his kind of peak, I think the shortest gap was 2 years between June and Blue Velvet. This is interesting. Bill Pullman plays like, is he a jazz musician? But he kind of ends up in kind of 2 stories, 2 timelines. There's a really bizarre bit where Robert Blake's character phones him, and Robert Blake's with him in the room, but he phones him from another location. This is it's got lots of like heavy kind of thrash metal, loads of kind of stroby images. I went to see this when it came out. I've seen it one more time since then. I didn't dislike it, but it's quite impenetrable. It's more about atmos and strangeness, but he explores ideas in this, I think, that he will use in a film called Mulholland Drive, which is a lot more cohesive. So that's my number 9 choice. My number 8 choice is, this is an amazing film. It's just, you're not going to maybe go straight to it. It's Eraserhead, his debut film. So, distribution, AFI Centre for Advanced Studies. This was a midnight movie when it came out. So, midnight movie is when you get strange films that are kind of shown at midnight in little art house cinemas in America and so on. It's got amazing Jack Nance, who was in Twin Peaks. He's got the amazing hair standing on end. Great sound design. Amazing cinematography. The black and white photography on this and sound design kind of got him the Elephant Man gig, and he kind of used what he'd learnt on this in that film. There's just bizarre dinner with the chicken, and there's actually based the child, David Lynch's daughter Jennifer, actually directs quite a lot of TV now, and she did a film called Boxing Helena. She was born with a club foot, something like that, and this was a way, the baby in Eraserhead, really went into the band that used to be in there, was a way of him exploring the anxiety about that, I guess. So that's my number 8 choice. It's never on TV, you don't see it around a lot, but it's just very strange. You get a chance to see The Grandmother as well. Okay, which is a short film. So the next one's Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. So I love the original Twin Peaks show. I think generally people prefer Series 1 because Lynch directed all the episodes, I think, on that and had a bigger hand at the kind of second series, the run of 22. He kind of gave more control over and was less involved. I think people forget how groundbreaking Twin Peaks was. It only ran for 2 series. People kind of dialed into the first few episodes, I think, and then they kind of found it too strange. I loved it and stuck with it. It's got some of the best TV ever. But it predates the kind of exclusive box set kind of experience. You know, you think about Sky Atlantic doing like 7 episode things. You know, the first series of Twin Peaks was like that, although it didn't have famous actors in. The fact that the film director, and remember he was an Oscar-nominated film director, twice Oscar-nominated filmmaker, had gone over to TV, was unheard of. Now Steven Soderbergh makes programs, David Fincher, and so on. Just the strangeness and quirkiness of this, and exploring the underbelly, the dark underbelly of Twin Peaks, the town. It was amazing. So when it actually came to the film, we were excited because it was going to tie up some of the things that were left unsaid, undone in the TV show, and to that extent it's quite successful. But it's kind of stranger, it's kind of, he goes more out there. It's kind of stranger than the TV show. I think one of the problems with it, it kind of looks a lot like a TV show, and although the TV show is kind of cinematic, it didn't have that kind of photography like you get now on TV shows. So it feels like if he'd done it now, it would just been like a special. Like, imagine if it was on Netflix. You get El Camino, like the Breaking Bad episode, and there's an episode of the Korean zombie drama Kingdom. It's like a little mini movie. They did it with 24. I think he would sort of do that now, but that didn't happen. There wasn't that outlet there. So that's my my number 7 choice. My number 6 choice is his version of Dune. So I say his version of Dune because there's the failed Jodorowsky Dune, which if you see the documentary, that's amazing. And of course we've got the Denis Villeneuve one now. There's loads of problems with Dune, but it has a quirkiness. It's got an unusual production design, unusual costume design. It looks kind of nautical. I think the problems of the film is he's not quite got a grip to the impenetrability of the whole book, I guess, and it probably needed a bigger version. And some of the acting's kind of a bit off kilter. The casting's pretty cool, but it's like the Denis Villeneuve. He's just got all the things Lynch didn't get quite right. He's got right, but I should say that I haven't seen the Denis Villeneuve version yet. When you see this video, it will be out, but I'm filming this. These are all scheduled. It's one of those films, Dune, you kind of have to watch it, and when you've watched it, there's something about it when you've not seen it for a while, like, oh, I'll watch Dune again. Really cool Toto score, some really cool ideas, the thing that turns up like in a big fish tank, I love that. Flawed, and his only kind of dalliance with trying to be mainstream is actually he does a cameo and he plays like a pilot, and he's quite funny when he acts. The only time he kind of went big budget, and that was enough. So my number 5 choice is The Straight Story from 1999. This got an Oscar nomination for Richard Farnsworth. I think people forget how good he is with actors. He gets great performances. So this is kind of quirky. It abandons the sort of surrealism. It's a very gentle film. I think it's all the better for that. But obviously it's about a guy who rides his lawnmower across country to visit his ailing brother who he's fallen out with many years ago. So it's like a road movie at a very slow pace. And some kind of quirkiness at the start with Sissy Spacek, his daughter. And then it kind of moves in, which is a little more Lynchian in some ways, but then it moves into more kind of straight fare. There's a great bit where he's kind of speeding down a hill but slowly, and he's worried about crashing. And the end scene's really, really poignant, they don't say anything, the brothers, but the Harry Dean Stanton, again, great casting Harry Dean Stanton, just the fact that Farnsworth's turned up. And Farnsworth got an Oscar nomination. He actually took his own life shortly after this. I think he had a terminal cancer, very sad, but very good. So my number 4 is, this was a big sort of film when I was a teenager. We'd all seen Blue Velvet, so when Wild at Heart came out in 1990, my kind of generation who would take sporadic trips to the art house cinemas, were just totally stoked for Wild at Heart. Although I don't think it's as good as his really classic films, it's just got loads of great great moments in it. Nicolas Cage is fantastic doing his Elvis thing. Laura Dern, Sailor, is great. It's just got that rock and roll 50s thing. You know, he does, you know, you get couples on the run films like Gun Crazy and, you know, stuff like that. For someone with Farley Grange, I can't remember the 50s anyway, but he's tapping into that kind of 50s obsession, but with all the surrealism. You've got the good witch image from the Wizard of Oz. There's the awful mum played by Diane Lane's mum. Sorry, can't remember her name, apologies. There's that great bit where she's smearing the makeup on, and then Willem Dafoe is the classic villain, Bobby Peru. Absolutely hideous, and then the amazing bit where he manages to blow his own head off, and he's got a stocking on because he's doing a robbery, and I think a dog comes over and licks it or something like that. Or was that a hand? I can't remember now. It's a while since I've seen it, but it's the great images with the matches, and you know, it's just I think he won the Palme d'Or Cannes for this, and this was kind of, although I don't think it's his best film, it was kind of Pete Lynch. At this point, this was about as mainstream as he sort of got. He did this slap bang, you know, he did the Twin Peaks around this time. Yeah, David Lynch was kind of hip. I should sort of say that he's the only kind of mainstream surrealist really has ever been. You look at Surrealist of Past like Louis Buñuel and stuff. You know, Lynch was bringing in these surreal ideas, but wrapping them in with cinematic tropes we recognise, like I was saying about the 50s thing, and, you know, and so on. And like Wild at Heart's like a couple on a run film, Blue Velvet's like a neo-noir effectively. So you've got things you recognise, but then you've got all this strangeness. And there's never been anyone like him, and there never will be, a completely individual, unique voice. Okay, so that's my number 3 choice is his 2001 classic Mulholland Drive. So this film, I think this film was voted by critics as the best film of the 21st century so far. I wouldn't agree. Obviously, critics like art house and cinematic things, but it's a really good film. It's got great performance from Naomi Watts, star-making role. What's interesting about this is he takes the kind of duality idea, timeline thing of Lost Highway and some of the image ideas of that, but basically you've got this kind of plot where you've got Naomi Watts, blonde Naomi Watts, going to Hollywood and ending up in this nightmarish scenario. And really what it does, it uses and there's a girl, her friend with dark hair, and it's using that neo-noir, film noir idea of the blonde, duplicitous blonde, and then the dark-haired good girl, but it flips that. So Naomi Watts is kind of the innocent blonde in Hollywood, from want of a better expression, and the other girl, forget the name of the actress, is like the dark hair, and she's kind of more, what's the word, less trustworthy or whatever, and is involved in dark things. There's a weird bit where they go to Club Silencio. That sequence is mad with the guys. I think he's playing sax. But as it gets more nightmarish, you know, it kind of flips, and you realise that Naomi Watts is actually kind of a drug addict, and she's kind of becomes the kind of dark-haired girl. And it's kind of taking that idea of Hollywood as the dream factory, and then Lynch is kind of using that dream factory idea to create a surrealist film. Obviously, a lot of surrealism uses dreams and dream imagery. And you kind of end up with this weird film noir where she's her fantasy is the blonde Naomi Watts, but in reality she's living a different life. That's the way I see it. I've probably not explained it great, and you know, but after, you know, you can watch it several times and make an analysis. But when I saw this film when it came out, it was like, oh, this is like a real top draw Lynch. Okay, and my number 2 choice is The Elephant Man. I think this is a beautiful film. I think what it benefits from is he brings all this black and white photography, sound design and imagery from Eraserhead, but it's wrapped into a story that's emotionally involving with characters you really care about, particularly John Merrick and Anthony Hopkins and his wife. But he's able to explore that cruelty to a human, and again, I suppose it's that thing his daughter with her having... you know, the problems at birth, I'm guessing they got corrected. He may have worried about her being ostracised. And so it's kind of, I think it's cool in that way. It's something he could get his teeth into. He got Oscar nomination for Best Director for this, and he's only 34 when he did 33. Quite remarkable. Mel Brooks, picked this guy who'd only made this experimental film, or one experimental short film, and took a punt. And amazing film, amazing performance from John Hurt, the makeup, and very moving. I remember the first time I saw this, I'd never seen anything like it before, and it's quite remarkable to kind of watch a film like this. It's like I think it might have been around Christmas time or something like that. It's like your Saturday night sort of prestige film or whatever, but it's got this look, it's got this imagery, and it's just quite extraordinary. Just looking at it a second, grossed $26 million at the US box office on a budget of $5 million. I mean, forget how many Oscars nominations it got, but it's just amazing to see that, really. And kind of Lynch is kind of coming out in this weird time where, the movie brats like Coppola, he's kind of coming to the end of his reign, and Scorsese, although he makes Raging Bull, his films aren't hits. Obviously Lynch is slightly different generation because he's born after the war, born 1946. But that's a masterpiece for me. So just going back through Inland Empire, okay, so I'm putting it there, but I can't judge it properly. Lost Highway, 9. 8, A Razorhead. 7, Twin Peaks, Fire Walk With Me. 6, June. 5, The Straight Story. 4, Wild at Heart. 3, Mulholland Drive. 2, The Elephant Man. So my number one choice, it won't surprise you, is his 1986 masterpiece, Blue Velvet. This is probably one of the greatest American films of the 1980s. It's one of the sort of all-time films of its day. When I was a youngster teenager, it was very often you saw posters that people had of Blue Velvet on the wall, and films like Betty Blue. What was its appeal? I just think you had this kind of straight-laced detective story in this kind of 50s style American town, and then just this madness behind it. I think I was obsessed with Dennis Hopper, Frank Booth, his performance, chilling and funny at the same time, pardon me. Laura Dern and Carl MacLachlan are great. Isabella Rossellini is really good, sort of disturbing. There's loads of disturbing images in this. It's got that strange sequence where Dad, I think, has a heart attack or a stroke at the start, and it's just the weirdest sort of heart attack scene ever in films. And then the dog's like licking him and playing with the hose, and later on he's got like a big brace on around his head. Sorry, I'm itching. But the photography's great. I mean, her living room, the colour design on her living room when he goes in, and there's something strange about the dimensions, about the size of the proportions of the furniture and that, and you realise how great the cinematography is on this film. Frederick Elms shot it. Numerous great dialogue, let's fuck. And then there's the great bit where Dean Stockwell's character mimes to the candy-coloured Sandman. I'm sorry. Hiccups, God. The candy-coloured Sandman. Really good. I'm just looking at its gross. Yeah, $6 million budget, $8.6 million in North America. Rentals, I mean, not a big hit. I mean, probably gross about 15 million, but for a film so strange, again, David Lynch was kind of operating somewhere in the fringes of the ether of the mainstream. And this is a great film. Like I said, it's one of the best, easily in the top 10 80s films. And it would easily make, 100 best lists. And it's an important work of art. So that's my number one, David Lynch. I hope you enjoyed that. Check out the Jimmy Stewart from Mars, amazing filmmaker and creator. And I'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.